Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. I was just looking something up on my iPad. Look up. That's a phrasal verb, and that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. Because phrasal verbs are some of the most challenging and hardest parts of English grammar to understand. So if you want to sound more like a native speaker, which I bet you do, then you've come to the right place. I'm going to give you a list of commonly used phrasal verbs as well as help you understand what you might be doing wrong. So if you're interested in hearing more, stay tuned. Phrasal verbs, oh, they're everywhere. In business and formal, informal, and casual speaking, we just can't seem to avoid them, right? So this is one of the challenging things for non-native speakers to understand. When do we use them? How do they work? What do we do with them? This is what I'm going to explain. So let's get on with it. Phrasal verbs consist of two parts, the verb and the preposition or adverb sometimes. For example, write down, look for, turn into. These are 3 examples of phrasal verbs, some of which you might know already. They can have a literal meaning, which is usually easier for people to understand. That's because what you see is exactly what it means. An example of this is, I looked up in a tree and saw a bird. That means you literally looked up into that tree and saw a bird. Another thing to know about phrasal verbs, not only do they have a literal meaning, they also have an idiomatic or figurative meaning, right? So this is the one that might confuse people. An example is, I looked up a word in the dictionary. So that means you searched for a word in the dictionary. See, look up and to search for, they don't exactly make sense together and they don't actually work together as words. So it's really important that you understand the meaning of that phrasal verb separately. Some of the common mistakes I notice with phrasal verbs are the verb tenses. So guys, always conjugate your phrasal verbs. This is really important and essential if you want to sound more like a native speaker, right? We always conjugate our phrasal verbs. If we use the example look up, like I did in the past, right? We can use it in the present tense, which is I look up the word in the dictionary. If we're going to use it in the past tense and talk about how we looked it up in the past, like yesterday, we would say I looked up the word in the dictionary. If we want to talk about it in the future, we would say I will look up the word tomorrow in the dictionary. A second common mistake that I see with phrasal verbs are often in the separation or inseparation of phrasal verbs. Some phrasal verbs always stick together and must always be together. And some phrasal verbs we separate depending on what goes in the middle. So I'm going to go through that with you guys. Separable and inseparable. What do I choose? Sometimes the preposition is placed after the verb or object. For example, she made up a funny story. The phrasal verb made up is together, right? We do not separate it. It's inseparable. It stays together. When I use it this way, she made up a funny story, I'm saying that her story was some fantasy, something from her imagination, right? Those work together. In the next example, she made the story up. Notice that the word up is placed after the object, the story. Okay, so this is really important to notice, is that sometimes phrasal verbs can be split apart or kept together. If the object is a pronoun, like me, you, him, her, we, them, us, then the preposition must be placed after the pronoun. For example, call me back. Take it down. Turn it off, right? So these are examples, well, 3 examples of a way in which we would place the preposition after the object pronoun. Some phrasal verbs are inseparable, kind of like they're married, and they always go together. We never separate them. For example, the phrasal verb hang on, which means to wait for a short time. An example is, can you hang on for a second? So you might hear this when you're speaking on the phone with a receptionist or operator and they're about to transfer you. They'll tell you to hang on for a second. The next one is run into, right? That means that you meet or see someone by chance or by accident. For example, I ran into Jan at the store. Here is a list of common phrasal verbs. And remember, guys, don't forget to always conjugate the verbs. The first word is to come across, which means to meet or find or see or discover by chance or by accident. For example, I recently came across some old photos. That means you recently saw or found or discovered some old photos in a room or a box or at your parents' house even. The next word is get over, which means to recover from an illness or sickness. And it also means to recover from a bad experience like a death or a breakup in a relationship. The first example is, last week I was getting over the flu. That means last week I was recovering from the flu or cold or fever or any sickness. If it's about a bad experience, we can use, last year I was getting over the death of my pet cat. So if you experience a loss or a death of any sort, you will definitely be trying to get over or recover from it. Another example is she still can't get over her ex-boyfriend. That means she still can't recover from or get over her ex-boyfriend.
I gotta walk out of here right now. Because getting over you is the hardest thing that I have ever had to do. I don't think I could do it again.
The next word is hold on, which has a literal and idiomatic meaning. The literal meaning refers to holding on to something or gripping something tightly, like the edge of a mountain or a cliff. For example, if you go rock climbing with a friend and you feel like you're about to slip off, your friend will say, hang on tight, or hang on.
Hang on, James.
Another example could be when you feel hot or warm in a store and you take off your coat or your sweater and you put it right here in between your forearm and your bicep and you hang on to your jacket. Hang on to your coat or sweater. The next is hang on in its idiomatic or figurative meaning, which means to wait for a short time. For example, can you hang on for a second? Can you hang on for a minute?
Hang on a second.
The next word is to look for, which means to search or seek something. For example, he is looking for his keys. My neighbor is looking for her dog. My mom is looking for her car. The next word is to look forward to, which means to anticipate or to await for something eagerly. For example, I look forward to meeting you next week. That means you are excited to meet with someone next week. Another example is, I look forward to our lunch tomorrow. That means you are excited, can't wait for the lunch you will have with a colleague or friend. The next word is make up, which means to reconcile or make peace after an argument, a fight, or a quarrel. For example, the two friends made up after their quarrel. Or, I made up with my mom after our argument. We also have make up in its other sense, which means to invent a plan, a story, or a lie. For example, she made up lies all the time. That means this person, he or she, always invented stories and lies, which isn't good. We also have made up in its adjective form, right? An example is, fairy tales are made up stories. The next word is put up with, which means to tolerate or endure something. For example, I'm too tired to put up with your nonsense. So picture a parent coming home from work and his or her kids are screaming all over the place and begging him or her to do something, and they're probably really tired. So that would be a response that a parent might have to their child. And that simply means that they're too exhausted, they can't tolerate or go through any of that silliness at the moment.
I don't know why I put up with you.
The next word is run into. This one has several other definitions. The first one is to collide with, right? So picture a car accident. For example, he ran into another car. He ran into a tree. He ran into a lamppost. Another one is to meet someone by chance or by accident. For example, I ran into Steve on my way home. I ran into my friend at the bus stop. That means you saw those two people by chance.
Hi, I was hoping to run into you.
The next meaning of run into is to experience a difficulty or a problem. For example, I ran into a problem at the ATM. Or, I ran into a problem during my test. That means you experienced a problem or issue while writing your test or while withdrawing money at the ATM. The next phrasal verb is run out of, which means to have none left of something. For example, we ran out of money. That's not good. We ran out of apples. My mom ran out of gas in her car. The final word is to switch on or off, which is the exact same as to turn on or off. And that means to turn an electrical device on or off. For example, I switched on the AC, I turned off the TV, I turned or switched on the iPad or tablet. So there you have it, guys, your list of commonly used phrasal verbs in English. Don't forget to write some of these ones down below. I'd love to see you use them in some sentences because they're great for practice. And if you have any other favorites, don't forget to comment those down below too. If you liked what you heard in this video, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you guys for watching, and see you soon.